My one piece of advice is get started. The pace of innovation is only going to get faster, and you got to start somewhere or you're going to get left behind.
Welcome to On Record PR. I'm your host, Gina Rubel. Today, I'm going on record with Lydia Petrakis, Senior Corporate Counsel and Digital Strategist in Microsoft's Corporate, External, and Legal Affairs Department. Her work is focused on driving industry-leading innovation to shape the future of Microsoft's legal practice. Lydia, I'm so excited to welcome you to the show to discuss the impact of generative AI on the practice of law.
Thank you so much, Gina, for having me. I'm really excited to talk with you today.
So am I. And, after your presentation on generative AI for the College of Law Practice Management, I was intrigued by what you had to say. So let's just dive right in.
Great, let's do it.
What are the practical use cases for generative AI for in-house legal teams?
Yeah, so there are so many different practical use cases, and I love that you're using the word practical because that's what we really need to start focusing on. Is like, how can we use it in our own legal work and not just in the generic areas? So really, I kind of start thinking about what is generative AI and what is it good at? So really, it's a branch of artificial intelligence that really helps us use natural language for that understanding and generation. So what is it good at? It's good at text generation, summarization, answering questions. So it can help us in practical ways in our legal work, whether that be research, drafting, negotiation, our compliance, our regulatory work, or our litigation work. And really what it does is it helps us be able to interact with this technology in a new way with natural language, right? That is the tool of our trade as lawyers. So I thought about it for a little bit of what are some practical use cases that we're doing here at Microsoft that might be helpful for others. So I have about 4 to share. I normally like to say rule of 3, but I picked 4, so bear with me. But first and foremost is to think about it is I couldn't have this conversation and be at Microsoft and not say Copilot, right? So I think about how we're using Copilot out of the box right now and all the offerings that other customers are getting as they're getting access to Copilot. And one of my favorite things about it is the ability that it really helps me to start my work at already at that good or great. So I have more likely to get the outstanding work product instead of starting at that average and iterating 20 times. So I use it a lot on helping create my first drafts, whether it be in a Word document, an email, and others. So just in my day-to-day to accelerate my content generation. My other favorite place is Teams meetings because we're so busy and we all know that feeling of, I'm going to be in 3 meetings at one place, or you're 10 minutes late because the last one ran long and you want to know what happened. So I use it a lot in the meeting to help me catch up on anything I've missed, summarize, but afterwards for those action summaries. So lawyers were not always great at writing our action items like a lot of our PMs and other colleagues. So that's helpful. So I think that's just a practical use case and really accelerating all your day-to-day work in the tools that we already use. And then 3 other areas that are examples that we've been focusing on and trying. So one is what our immigration group has done a fantastic job over the years of really thinking about documenting their knowledge and that digital transformation work, because we can't get to AI transformation without building on our foundation. But because they did all of that work and a lot of really great Q&A experiences. So that team, others, we have Q&A experiences that we've used generative AI for. So it's being able to help reduce the amount of time to find knowledge, the amount of time to draft answers, to client questions and really help them at scale. Another area we've already started exploring is in contracting. So that's probably a space very familiar to many of us. So helping, whether it's analyzing, the documents, negotiation support, others. So we have one where we put in, I would say just AI, maybe not generative AI yet, it's reduced our review time of these contracts by 75% by putting in a lot of automations and reviews. And now we're starting to explore how do we bring in generative AI to even reduce that further, and also lots of other areas we've been exploring in contracting. And then the third is the one that I'm very excited about because it's one of the areas is the regulatory work. We all are experiencing that tsunami of regulations and how do we handle it? So we have a couple of different pilots and experiments going on internally with our own framework, as well as with one of our partners in EY, where we're looking at bringing in generative AI to help with all sorts of different items, whether it's looking at how our position might have changed over time, helping people quickly find answers in our regulatory knowledge, or even drafting first drafts of a lot of the pieces of our own governance framework for us.
That's incredible. And it's amazing where generative AI has gone in the last year. It's mind-blowing, right?
Yeah.
I almost want to be at a loss for words, but I'm not. How do you prioritize those use cases, and how do those priorities align with Microsoft's organizational goals?
That is such a fantastic question, because I felt like that was a mouthful just telling you about four, and there's so many others. So where we really did is we started our journey first and wanting to make sure that we're thinking about our strategy and our prioritization is making sure that we're also involving the diverse perspectives across the organization, so we're not leaving anyone out. So we started first with a crowdsourcing activity to ask our people, where are you already using AI where you could see generative AI could come bring additional value or new use cases completely? And we actually got about 250 responses. So impressive for a survey.
That's great.
And then through that, we were able to identify our three key strategic priority areas. And we call them advise, transact, and comply. So think of advise as your knowledge management, your transact, contracting, and comply really has a regulatory focus and lens for us. And we picked those three because not only did they show up as the consistent themes across all of those areas, but we also looked at where we could drive scale and impact widely across the department. So those are three areas where it's not going to just help one or two people, it's going to help hundreds or thousands of individuals with that workflow. So we can talk any more details you want, but that's really how we started thinking about prioritizing and where we're going to focus.
And I appreciate that. Are there misconceptions about the implementation of Gen AI in legal?
Yes, of course there are. Just like anything that's new, right? We all learn, we're learning together. Some of us think one way or the others. I will keep to my rule of three on this one. I think there's three main misconceptions. One is the magic word, right? Generative AI is just this magic tool. It's going to come in, it's going to fix everything, and I don't have to do anything underlying work or changing any behavior. And I think that is a misconception because one of the most important parts of this is data. So I think I alluded to this earlier as building on digital transformation work. So we are a firm believer that we have to have our data in order. So we need process automation, helping us continue to gather our data, understand our data, because AI is built on data. So did I say data enough?
I don't know. I'll go back to the transcript and I will go to Copilot and have it tell me how many times you said data.
There you go. It will do that for you, and it will be a large count. So that's really kind of number one. And so we're calling our effort. So you mentioned at the beginning, our organization is CELA, Corporate External and Legal Affairs. So we're calling it our CELA Data Factory. It's really thinking about how we're going to identify all of our diverse data and unify, ingest it, and power our experiences. So that's one. It's not magic that'll fix everything. It totally is powerful, but you have to do some work with it. The second one is that somebody else is going to do all the work for me. There's like a data science team or a legal ops team, and they're just going to solve all my problems. And while all of those individuals and teams will completely help you on your journey, we have to have the secret recipe, the magic recipe is bringing that legal subject matter expertise alongside all of the technical expertise together. And that's where we see the biggest return on our investments when we're running these experiments, is our legal professionals ready to lean in with us and our technical teams. And then the last one is, this one is a theme that I think all of our listeners are used to, but it's the cultural transformation. So change management adoption is as everything. So we can bring all the best technology, but if we don't bring people along, we're not going to be as successful. So it's really important to think in your strategy and areas of how are you going to make it really a department-led initiative, bottom up, top down, and how are you going to recognize and incentivize the people you want and give them the requisite, skilling to be successful in this new world of AI.
So Lydia, we're going to pause here for a message from our sponsor, and then we're going to get back to that idea of change management.
Great.
This episode is brought to you by Lydia Rubel Communications, a public relations and marketing agency serving law firms and businesses internationally. With an expert team of professionals positioned throughout the U.S. and supported by international affiliates, Furia Rubel enhances its clients' brands through integrated communications by providing expert guidance in crisis management and high-profile litigation, protecting brand and reputation, and supporting internal marketing teams with media relations, media and crisis training, and client and talent acquisition and retention. To learn more, visit furiarubel.com.
Welcome back to On Record PR with Lydia Petrakis. And we're going to jump right into another question, which carries over from what you just spoke about. You were talking about change management as a misconception in the implementation of Gen AI in legal. And so what I'm wondering is, in what ways can a shift towards value-based billing incentivize the adoption of generative AI technologies in the legal industry?
Yeah, absolutely. So our partnership between in-house and law firms is always a very key important part of strategy and how we're thinking of moving forward, because it's such a close partnership. We work together all the time. And so if you think about the canonical law firm, it's, billable hour, and it doesn't provide a lot of incentive to bringing in innovation to the practice, because it's really thinking about revenue-based measurements. So when we start thinking about ways of value-based billing, I think there's somewhere it can help us together. It can create some additional incentives for us to work together and experiment together, and for our law firm partners to continue to innovate so they can have that profit and revenue while still bringing in innovation and doing the great work. I think also is we can take some of our learnings when we just shifted at the beginning from hourly-based to value-based billing. So it's been a tool to be used as an incentive for that area, for that partnership together. But in itself, value-based billing isn't going to solve all of our problems. So I think it's important is just going from billable hour to an AFA is not going to be the turning point. It really is having our in-house teams being really clear with our law firm partners of what we need and want and expect, giving them the ability with policies and access to innovate, and then having that continuous conversations together, because we're not going to get it right. We're going to fail some. We're going to experiment, and we're going to not get it right. So we have to give each other room to learn and grow together. And I think some of the value-based can bring that opportunity together.
That really leads to the next question, which how can law firms and corporations partner in generative AI innovation?
Yeah. So I think key ones I think mentioned is experiment together, as both sides need to work on it together. We can't just tell law firms do it and sit there. We need help, and same thing. They can't just wait for us to instruct exactly what we want. So we have to partner together. Having the ongoing dialogue. So when you run into a roadblock or you try something, it doesn't work, you can switch and be agile and move together. And I think one of the most important things to be careful about, and like a really big challenge to overcome, is that we have to make sure that our risk aversion doesn't completely stifle innovation. So that is not to say that there aren't security, privacy, confidentiality risks that we need to make sure that we're being mindful of, we're being smart, we're taking into consideration, we're making mitigations for it. But they shouldn't be a blocker where it's just a no-go. We have to make sure we can innovate and do it responsibly. You might have heard Microsoft were very big on responsible AI principles.
I have heard that. And, it's interesting, Lydia, because I think about the different size firms and how innovation and experimentation can be costly. And this is just a statement. I'm not going to ask you a question. I don't want to put you on the spot here, but I do hope that there's room for all size firms to experiment and innovate depending on the types of practices they have and the types of work they do with their corporate clients. Because I am seeing a lot of AmLaw 100 firms diving into innovation with their corporate clients, but there is a huge investment. And so hopefully, and this is just my hope for those AmLaw 200 and smaller firms, that they do find the ability to invest in this type of innovation, because it is changing the world within which we work and live, but we're talking about work. What one piece of advice do you have for law firms about generative AI?
Yeah, my one piece of advice is get started. The pace of innovation is only going to get faster, and you got to start somewhere or you're going to get left behind.
Couldn't agree more. So looking ahead, how do you envision the role of generative AI evolving in the legal sector? And are there use cases or technologies that you believe will significantly impact the industry?
Yeah, I really think that this era of generative AI is going to be completely transformative across industries all over. But I think this is a really unique time because we're really seeing the legal industry being more focused than I have in any other of the technology waves. There's more interest, there's more excitement. And as I mentioned earlier, our practice is really ripe for this technology and in the interface of natural language. So completely transformative, where I think we're going to see continued evolution. So we're already seeing great capabilities on the market, and they're continuously evolving and growing at an accelerated pace. But the areas where I mentioned earlier in our strategy on advise and comply, so there's already a lot. I've seen more on transact. I think there's lots of great opportunities to go use capabilities and experiment. But I think those two areas, they're going to take a little bit more work, especially for in-house, because of a lot of our data is sitting in inboxes and isn't just like pretty and ready to go and right to just put in these technologies. Right. But when we start getting those, I think that is going to be some of the most transformative when we can really help our attorneys, our legal professionals across the department and our clients get the information they need and be able to generate that content, at least getting even that like 80%, at the beginning. So our professionals who have the most constrained resource, their subject matter expertise, can actually be taking their time to be spending in that area where we all went to law school for instead of the repetitive tasks. And by short, we're going to have to. We've been saying it for a while and we're feeling it even more. Like the amount of complexity, the velocity of the business and the demands on our legal departments is growing, and it's consistently growing, and our resources aren't keeping up.
I've been in the legal industry over 30 years, and I look back at when we implemented email as a new technology. And so many people thought, it's not going to change anything. And it's not only changed everything, it's changed expectations, productivity. It's now become non-productive. It's fascinating to me. And I can't help but ponder if we didn't have COVID and the experience we all had with going virtual and having to work from home and all of those things, if many law firms wouldn't be as quick on the uptake with Gen AI as they have been, because we had to embrace other technologies that so many had discounted, like virtual meetings, like we're having here today. So I find it fascinating. I, with you, agree that it is evolving faster than any of us ever expected. Maybe you expected it. I certainly didn't think it would happen this fast. But we are on a major road of transformation in the legal industry. And for those firms that don't embrace it, they're not going to survive.
Couldn't agree more with you. And I still am always floored and impressed at how fast we're moving. If we look at the acceleration curve from introduction to technology to where it is today, we've never seen anything like this. And funny point to your mention about COVID and teams. So I was recently doing a big presentation at our department, gathering our summit a year on our AI for CELA and all the work we're going to be doing on generative AI. And I was reflecting back, the last time we were able to meet fully in person as a whole department was right before COVID. And I was presenting on why legal should be using Teams. So I was on a mission, and I was still on a change management struggle and journey to get people to change how they worked into Teams. So if that helps you at all, I think that's a perfect antidote.
Well, I really appreciate that validation, because that just, it confirms my suspicion. It's certainly going to be a hot topic as we go through this year and 2024 and beyond. I do look forward to hearing you speak at ALM's Legal Week this year. I will be speaking there the day before you on generative AI as well. So I will put those links in our show notes. And this has just been a fantastic conversation, Lydia. I'm so appreciative. I also want to thank our listeners for tuning into On Record PR. I want to ask you listeners, please visit our website, onrecordpr.com, subscribe to the podcast, share it with others, and check out our show notes. But as always, we welcome guests and topic ideas sent to podcast@onrecordpr.com, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Gina, for having me.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
On Record PR is produced by Jennifer Simpson-Carr and Matt Henderson, with support from the team at Furia Rubel Communications. This episode is edited by Željko Tomic of Compost Media Flow.